if you want to adopt AI tools, if you want to have like a ChatGPT for analytics and ask, what's the number of daily active users, what's the increase in the past months, and you want to trust the number that this tool gives you, you have to rely on some sort of truth, some certified set of definitions to train those models.
Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Richie. Happy to be here.
Cool. So to begin with, just talk me through what are the big challenges in data governance right now?
Wow. So I think the biggest challenge is that so many business leaders cannot trust the numbers that their data products report, right? I think that's the biggest. You invest so much money in the data stack, in building data pipelines, data engineering teams, a warehouse, BI tools, all of that just to make data-driven decisions. And in the end, you don't trust the numbers. I think that's the biggest issue right now, if you ask me.
Sure, yeah. So I can say, there's a big problem if you are spending all this money on your data solutions and then actually, I don't really trust the answer at all, then it's a complete waste of time. So I know one of the solutions you're sort of interested in order to get better trust in data is the use of a semantic layer. First of all, can you just talk me through what is a semantic layer?
Yes, so it's actually, you can consider it a mart or a store where you park all the certified or governed or official definitions of your calculations. For example, if I led a real estate department in a huge fintech company. And one of the major KPIs was the number of assets that we own. So number of assets can be calculated from various systems in different ways. And we had actually I experienced it myself. We had about 300 assets that we managed, and the numbers that we got for number of total assets from different systems ranged between 270 to 320. That's a huge mistake. So a semantic layer is a sort of, mart where you will have the official definition of total number of assets. And if I want to know it, I will use the semantic layer to get the right context from the data. So there's lots of data out there in tables. And if you want to get the right context for this data, you use a semantic layer. It provides you the context for that data so that you can know which table you need to query to get the answer that you want.
Okay, so the idea is that you've got an official definition of important metrics that you need to calculate. Okay, I like that.
Yes.
And I guess if you don't care 10% either way, then it maybe matters less on how many assets you have. Like you said, from 270 to 320. It's like if that's good, about 300 is good enough, then you maybe care less. But if you want the exact answer, then you need an official definition. So talk me through, are there any other benefits beyond just having a single source of truth? Why would you want this semantic layer?
So, actually right now, almost every BI tool has a semantic layer. It's not a new concept. If you use Tableau, you build metrics in Tableau. You build them in workbooks. You can build them in data sources. If you use Looker, you have semantics in LookML. You have the equivalent of almost every BI tool. So it's like the bread and butter of analysts to create calculations, to create definitions, to build, define new terms as they go. So every data system already has lots of semantic definitions. This is what captures business logic. The reason you want a semantic layer is because quite often there are lots of duplicated and inconsistent definitions. Many of the definitions are siloed or trapped, in some analyst workbook or, a spreadsheet or something. So if you want to reach consistency and alignment across an organization, you want everyone to speak the same language. You want to build this central source of truth, this semantic layer where you have the official definition that everyone can trust. This is certified. This is the right definition for total revenues, for daily active users. There might be lots of other copies out there for experiments, for ad hoc analysis, for things that were built and abandoned. But that's where you find the truth. So this is why it's so important. And it's important for two things, because you want to know that the number that you get is the right number. And when we're facing the future, and I guess we'll touch that, we'll elaborate on this a bit more. If you want to adopt AI tools, if you want to have like a ChatGPT for analytics and ask, what's the number of daily active users? What's the increase in the past months? And you want to trust the number that this tool gives you, you have to rely on some sort of truth, some certified set of definitions to train those models.
Yeah, I can certainly see how if you've got lots of different analysts working on similar problems, they're all going to calculate things in similar but not quite the same way. In fact, I think I've even done it myself. I've had to go back and calculate something I knew I calculated last year, and then I've probably done it the same, but maybe not. So having that single standard definition is going to reduce that sort of duplication of workload. Okay, actually, this leads to a question in how do you make sure that you only have one version? The implementation seems like it's maybe the hard part, stopping analysts doing all this duplicate work.
I mean, you touch on saying the most important part. I think today almost every organization understands they need a semantic layer, but at the same time, you rarely see well-built, managed semantic layers. And the reason is it's actually a hard implementation process. And let me try to summarize what it consists of. So first, you need to curate the right metrics. You have thousands of metrics that were built over the years in a large scale, enterprise. They're all buried everywhere in BI tools, in data applications, in data science notebooks. So you need to map them, understand which ones matter, which ones are the most important KPIs. You need to resolve, all inconsistencies and duplications. If you have 3 versions of something, understand what is the right version that you want to add to this. So after this curation, mapping, understanding which measures capture business value, which, you can delete just to keep the environment clean and clear, then you need to code them. All right. That's a big migration process. But once they're coded, what does the workflow look like? So you cannot just tell the organization, listen, now we have a semantic layer. These are your definitions. That's what you're going to use from now on. Stop creating new stuff in your notebooks. That's now your dictionary, and that's what you can use, because things change all the time. So a day later, there are already 20 new metrics out there buried in all those BI tools. So if you want to really build and manage a semantic layer, you also need to develop a workflow that takes into account that things will change all the time. I think these are the main challenges. So curating, creating it, and then building a workflow that keeps maintaining it up to date, consistent as you go.
Yeah, I can certainly see how there's a lot of subtle sort of process and organizational challenges in there. Maybe we'll back up and say who needs to be involved in creating all these sort of definitions there. It sounds like you can need someone technical in order to create this, but also someone with business knowledge as well. That means different teams working together. So yeah, talk me through everyone who needs to be involved in this and what their different roles are.
So, everyone. Think business logic is created by the business, not some back office of engineers who will decide what's the important metric. So the business logic is created, it's evolving, it keeps changing, and this happens on the business side. And, business analysts that work closely with the business, they're usually embedded in business domains. So they created, that's where the inception of new semantics, new logic happens. And at the same time, although there were attempts to teach analysts how to code or try to turn them into engineers, there is an engineering effort involved. Today, when you say governed, you mean coded, version controlled, documented, tested. It's not just, I'm not just writing the definition. There is a way to manage this like code so that it's actually governed. So to have version controlled, coded metrics, you need engineers to be involved. And they need to understand what analysts want them to code there. Now, there are ways to bridge the gaps a bit better. Now, especially with AI, you have co-pilots and auto code generators. These gaps, just coding things, these gaps will become less and less big, but still you need to design, to architect this properly. You need to make sure that the data that those metrics rely on, the transformations, the table, they're also built and designed well. So there is a huge effort here that combines business as the creators, analysts as, implementing those or writing them, using data language, and then engineers coding them. So everyone's involved.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of different teams there. Does this have an implication that you need some analysts embedded within those business teams in order to be able to sort of write the definition down in a technical way that's come from the business logic? It sounds like you need someone with both the data skills and the business skills.
So you need business understanding and you need technical understanding. Now, there is a new role in the data space that was invented, I think, by DBT called analytics engineers. And the more we learn, we see how this role evolves, and the people in charge. It reminds me of product managers in the software development world. They are kind of the bridge between the business and the data team. They understand the technicalities of data. They can write and code things like engineers, but they're also closer to the business. They work closely with the business analysts. So analytics engineers, I think they became officially the owners of the semantic layer. They're the one that build it, that maintain it, and they should be able to manage this conversation.
Okay, that's very cool. And it seems like analytics engineer is one of these sort of hot new data roles.
Yeah.
So, can you maybe get more into depth on how does one become an analytics engineer? What sort of skills you need to do this role?
I think, I've interviewed in the past year over 300 analytics engineers. I really spoke to so many. And there are different stories. Sometimes it's engineers that really express interest in the business and they're keen to, see the impact of their work. So they become, and you see the same thing with product managers. This is why I like the comparison. So sometimes it's engineers that have a very strong business understanding and interest, and they can speak to business people and they become analytics engineers. But I think more often it's analysts that want to, skill up and become engineers. And it's like a natural path from the world of analytics to the world of data engineering. It goes through analytics engineering. So I've seen both things.
Interesting. So you get some very business-focused people, but also there's somewhere they're kind of halfway in between a data engineer and a data analyst. All right.
Yeah.
And so is the role of this job, is it basically just grinding out lots of metrics all the time? Is it just vast amounts of just creating these definitions for how the business wants to run, or is there more to it?
So in fact, they're kind of the ones that really understand the importance of business logic governance. And in a way, you could say they own business logic governance. It started with just modeling in DBT, so writing the DBT transformations instead of having joins and computed columns built in Tableau. They do it in DBT, and they're the ones coding these things in DBT. And then, the natural next step would be, transformations capture logic, semantics, metrics capture logic. So they're coding this. But like every engineering role, it's beyond coding. It's really architecting it the right way. It's really understanding how you build the processes and the workflows, how you determine that something's a duplicate. How do you know which one are the certified things, which are not? How do you design the system? And many of them are actually pretty senior in their skill set, in their impact, the level of impact that they have. They can sometimes work with 20 engineers on the data platform, hundreds of engineers in the business side, and there are 4 or 5 analytics engineers that really design the whole interface.
Okay, so you mentioned tools like DBT, and I guess there's a lot of SQL in the background, and BI tools like Tableau, whatever. So beyond that, because generative AI is sort of working its way into absolutely everything, is there an AI angle here? Is that changing how the analytics engineer role works?
Everything that will impact semantic layers and governance will change how analytics engineers work or their role. I think, AI, today, maybe 5 years ago, the companies that introduced semantic layers and, data visionaries, everyone said semantic layers are important. If you want to trust your data, if you want to have this source of truth, you need to build a semantic layer. I think with AI, this becomes clear. Without a semantic layer, it's not going to work. If you build a central governed semantic layer, it might work. And you need to do it the right way. So I think that's where analytics engineers will become, analytics engineers, and also, the data leadership and how it owns this and builds the roadmap for that. But they will be the ones implementing this. And I think good or well-performing data teams will make AI work and others will fail. And the question is whether they will be able to manage a centrally governed semantic layer, right?
Okay, so I guess since some people are going to succeed, some people are going to fail. We need to figure out how to be in the success group. Maybe just for some motivation, do you have any examples of companies where they've built the semantic layer, they've seen some good results? Like, talk me through some case studies.
I think it's still in the early stages. I'm working with a big customer that started working with the semantic layer in DBT early on. They built all the metrics there. They really have a source of truth for metrics. They let analysts create things in Looker. So they have their playground, they have where they do things, but as things become mature, I think it's a very big company, like 5,000 people, hundreds of analysts. And there are like a dozen of analytics engineers that really manage to centralize the metrics across for each business domain. And they are a very, their data is really contributing lots of value to their decisions, to the business decisions. All their business rely heavily on data. It's a big European unicorn company, micromobility company. So I've just seen this. And they were the first adopters of the DBT semantic layer.
I guess the tricky part is going to be measuring success. Like what constitutes success? It sounds like there are some productivity benefits from not duplicating work, and there are some more nebulous things about making less stupid decisions because the numbers are wrong. Can you talk me through how would you go, we've implemented a semantic layer, this is how we know it's successful?
I would count once if you invest in governing your data model or your business logic in semantics and I would say also transformation. So tables, fact tables. That this whole altogether captures your governed business logic. So we actually introduced something we call governance score. If you could say for an organization, for example, what percentage of their dashboards rely on governed metrics, meaning metrics that are in the official semantic layer, or governed tables that are coded in DBT. What percentage of the queries are from governed resources? This gives you already, a first indication of how well you can trust the results there, because they don't rely just on any joint that someone did in an external table with a row table with a CSV, but on actually, data that is version controlled, that is coded, that is governed. So that's one way. And we took this concept of governance score, like the simplest way, and expanded it to more sophisticated governance insights. So what's the duplication score? How many duplicates you have in your official semantic layer? Is this like 0 duplications or close to like 20% of it is duplicated, 30% is duplicated? How well is it's documented? What percentage of your metrics are poorly documented or well documented? And you can think where you can take it. So if you use those governance scores, you can actually see how close you are to actually using governed, controlled logic and not just anything that someone creates. So I think this will become more and more useful.
Okay, so I like the idea of just tracking like what percentage of your metrics are actually governed and what percentage just sort of ad hoc analyses. I guess this has a sort of knock-on implication that you want to just gradually start shifting things to a governed approach. So where do you start? Is there a specific order? Like, should you start with like one area of the business? Should you do like a few metrics from every area of the business? What's the plan for actually getting all your data governed?
I guess if I needed to say it like in simple words, I would say where the business value lies, right? I would want to start with the things that bring the highest value to the business. And then, that's where you want to start. So many practices are like, let's start with the main KPIs and pick the most important business domains where all the focus is. But you can actually use, and that's also something that we introduced, you can use utilization as a very strong indicator to value. The measures that are currently used the dashboards that are currently used, that people actually watch them and use them and refresh them. That's what the business value is right now from all the data assets that you build. Let's start there. Let's make sure that the highly used data assets, data products are governed. And then, you can prioritize based on that. That's a very strong, indicator for value. And then you have cost, where you spend money. If you spend a lot of money on these measures, on these tables, maybe you want to go there because you want to make sure you spend money on the right things.
Okay, I love that idea of using utilization to see where value lies in your data sets. Because obviously, so many dashboards where it's I created it and then maybe someone looks at it, maybe they don't. But some, it's the C-suite's looking at this every day just to track something important. That's obviously going to be a much higher value.
Yeah, I can share with you a statistic. Almost every customer I'm working with, over 50% of their dashboard has zero utilization in the past 2-3 months. Over 50%. It's crazy. It's you have all those dashboards that usually sit on extracted tables, and you waste money on that, and everyone gets lost there, and it's not even used by anyone. So yeah, it's super important.
Absolutely, yeah. So tracking that utilization does seem an important facet of governance. Okay, so I'm wondering, since the big point of the semantic layer is to reduce the amount of chaos, so you're not having to track individual data sets, you're just tracking metrics. As this scales, do you have the problem that you've then got to track all the metrics you've just created?
So my personal take on that, and there are different theses, but my thesis is that every data application and every business intelligence tool will have its own local semantic layer. You will have the Looker semantic layer, the Tableau semantic layer, the Hex semantic layer, the Sigma semantic layer, and we can go on and on and on. And it will be the place where things are created fast by analysts and stored locally if you want to experiment with something or try something. And then there will be a sort of shift from the local semantic layer to the universal semantic layer. And this is something that is consistent and aligned across every data application and all data users. And to do that, you have to own very powerful observability and mapping tools. You have to see what's created everywhere. You cannot just expect analysts to say, well, this is an important measure. Let's open a ticket for the analytics engineers that maintain the universal semantic layer to add that. They will create it in their tool, add this to a dashboard. This dashboard will gain traction and no one will bother because no one has time, right? Everyone's working so hard to deliver data products on time. So you have to own and obtain, powerful observability tools that map everything that exists, that identify duplicates, that indicate, this and this and this should go to the universal semantic layer, that it's time, shift them. They're already highly used. They're still trapped. You want to add them. You want to align them with everyone. So, and on top of this powerful observability capability, you can build a workflow.
Okay, all right. So I guess the intermediate stage from everything's in this universal sort of metric store, you've got this sort of local store, so you're dealing with one department at a time, and then gradually you can sort of shift them to this sort of central place. Okay. The next thing is maintenance. So once you've created these metrics, I know certainly at Datacamp, the business is always well, are we calculating this in the right way? And you're going to want to update the metrics. And so then you've got, I guess, multiple versions of how you calculate, I don't know, your customer lifetime value or something, or your customer acquisition cost. And I guess you want the new version, but also you want the old version just for consistency of previous reporting. How do you deal with multiple versions of metrics?
So thank God we've got Git, right? Introduced into data, finally. So I think, today, every same as you manage dbt transformations in the warehouse in dbt, in a Git repo, you do the same for metrics. It's managed like code with version control. You can, roll back. You always test new versions and you run regressions, and everything you do with code, now you can do with metrics. And each report, which version of the metric it used. It's part of the system. It has to be. Otherwise, as you mentioned, you will create a duplicate whenever you want to change and a duplicated dashboard. And again, this chaos is formed, just like that. So.
Okay, that seems to make sense that as long as you capture all your business logic in code, then you've got access to Git and other version control tools. And that way you can manage things. Maintenance just happens using natural software development life cycles. Okay. So I guess the other thing is just about who in leadership needs to be involved in this. Because you've got data teams, you've got business teams. Should managing all this, is this the responsibility of a chief data officer? Is it your chief revenue officer? Is it someone from IT? Like, who needs to take charge of this?
So it's obviously depending on the scale of the organization, right? Most organizations, smaller organizations usually don't even have a CDO role. They will have like VP data of analytics. In a good case, often it's like director level, director of data platform, director of data analytics. So they usually own the implementation, but then I think it's split because those data folks and the leadership of the data, I think they understand quite well why you want to build a semantic layer that you need to govern. They have a pretty hard education role to educate the business leadership how semantic layers, what they have to do with AI and with the pace at which they're getting reports and why they cannot trust the numbers. And it's a pretty difficult role to educate everyone on that. So they usually are the champion. They buy the tools, they implement them, they own them, but they need to get the business buy-in for that. And it's on them to teach them, and we help them, but to teach them why those things are related in the first place.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly see how there's going to be this big education component to make sure you've got data people and business people talking to each other productively. Okay, so you mentioned that for smaller businesses, you're not going to have this chief data officer role. And so I'm now wondering, is there a difference in how you go about implementing this if you're a small business versus a large enterprise?
I've been speaking and working with organizations of like 200 people organizations, 1,000 people organizations, 10,000 people organizations. I think that, what changes entirely is the level of chaos. When there are 100 people, 5, 6 data people, they just know everything by heart. They can talk to each other. They know where to find things. They know which metrics exist and how they were defined and when and by whom. It's just easy. It's still solvable without all those tools. They might even say, well, we don't need a semantic layer. We just don't have conflicts. We don't have duplicates. We don't have all of that. We control it. We manage it so well. And then there is like a phase transition. When the number of data practitioners exceed like 25 people, then you lose control. And often if you don't build it right from the beginning, you start replatforming, migrating, changing everything. Almost every data team is in some sort of replatforming project. Now the most popular I hear about is replatforming to governance. Everything was about democratization, access, democratization. Now we replatform to embrace governance. So if you don't do it when you're small, you replatform. I think as you become large, it's just the pace at which new things are created and the amount of logic that you already have across the business domain is something that you cannot control just by aligning everyone and speaking with everyone. And that's where it becomes critical.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like one of the main benefits to this then is that it allows you to scale your data teams. It allows you to scale your usage of data because there is just less chaos and you need to worry about you don't need to spend more time worrying about consistency because things are sort of guaranteed to work that way.
Yeah, and maybe the biggest benefit, and that's something that I think business leaders will find super relevant and interesting, is really AI. Because today they depend on those, dozens of data people to just create a report for them that tells them, how many new revenues were gained in the past quarter based on, territory, campaign, business product, and so on. And this reality of just asking and getting a question that you can trust, getting an answer that you can trust, that's a reality that every business leader, I think, dreams of. It just seems still too far away, but this really is what's enabled by building a centrally governed semantic layer. That's really, this dream will no longer be a dream.
Okay. So this is really, if you want to get to self-service analytics and just have that AI chatbot that's going to give you the answers to all your data questions, then you need this semantic layer to be built first. Okay. That's cool. So can you talk me through how this all fits together then? So you got a generative AI layer, you've got a semantic layer. Is there anything else that needs to happen in order to realize this self-service dream?
So I like to draw it like the journey to AI, okay, for this chatbot AI analytics tool. So the first step, I think, is beginning to build this semantic layer and getting this, cross ecosystem observability of all the metrics that are being created everywhere, whether it's in this semantic layer or in the local semantic layers or in notebooks or wherever. So you start by getting observability and mapping the utilization. And then if you think about how you train those AI tools, you need to really tell them, this metric is certified for your training model. This is not. This is just an experiment. This is just a duplicate. So this is sort of, you can think about it as a layer of governance insights that help you mark that's certified, that's not. That's certified, that's not. And once you're there, once you have everything mapped, you have a semantic layer, you have this certified labeling mechanism that is smart. It's not just a stupid, manual mechanism. It relies on governance insights. Then you can, from that point on, and we've run a few POCs on that, the tools that we already have in AI will just make it work for the data model level. So you will be able to ask questions in natural language like, show me the dashboards that report the daily active users and numbers that were used in the past 2 months by the product department and are governed. You can get the exact, and once you have that, you can ask any question you want on the data because it knows how to find the right places to query and generate the right query. So the building blocks are creating the semantic layer, getting observability and utilization so that you can actually build the workflow to manage things, to decide what goes there, what needs to be deleted, what's duplicated and need to be resolved, to build the tools to do that. And then some governance insights that allow you to tag, this is going to the training model, this is not going there. From there on, it's almost a plug and play thing.
Okay, plug and play sounds wonderful.
But there's a lot of work until that stage, right? A lot to be done, yeah.
One of the big pushbacks you get whenever you mention data governance is that it's going to stifle innovation. So can you talk me through, how do you do data governance in a sensible manner that still encourages innovation?
So you can call it innovation, creativity, freedom, right? And it's a built-in challenge because governance usually associated with slowing things down, creating ticketing workflows, open a ticket, wait for a priority, wait for things to be built for you, just then start using them. So the problem is clear. When you bias towards governance, everyone experiences friction and bottlenecks and everything's slowing down. The problem is that freedom for analytics and creativity and innovation is critical because that's how you really solve business questions. You cannot just rely on what exists. You have to get the freedom to build new terms, to create a new analysis as you go, even if 90% will be garbage. That's how analytics works. So, and this is why I'm emphasizing so much this observability piece. You have to let analysts create things independently, creatively in their native environments, preferred tools, preferred language at their pace as they like. That's where the magic happens. But as I said, 90% is garbage, and you will see that through the usage. It's not going to be used. They're just going to create it. No one's going to use it. Create it, try it. It will be local, their notebook. But then they create a report or a data product and it gets traction. And that's when you understand this creation needs to be, added to the semantic layer. But you have to maintain this level of creativity. Otherwise, again, you're stuck in place and no one wants that.
Okay, so it sounds like you need to distinguish, like, this is an ad hoc analysis on something new with this is something we need to reuse. Like, I guess analysts shouldn't be allowed to like redefine how like the company like total revenue is generated. Like, you need an official definition for that. But if they're just playing with something new, then that needs to be less governed.
So let me give you a real world example. So I was working with a customer. They had their definition for engaged user. And a user that signed into the application once a week was defined engaged user by marketing, by sales, whatever. And they always track the number of engaged user because, churn usually, when the number of engaged user reduces, then eventually it translates to churn and no one wants to experience churn, right? But then they figured the definition. So the product people, they ran an analysis and they figured that this definition once a week is not a good indicator. It's actually twice every 3 weeks. That's a much better indicator. And they did their experiment and they realized that. Now think about all the dashboards that rely on the once a week definition. And now they need to go and figure out who is using that. And now we want to change the terminology. And now we want to use twice every 3 weeks. And it's the new engagement user definition. And this becomes like a nightmare. So they keep it in product and we know where this goes. So in the world of a semantic layer, they would actually be able to create a new version in this certified place. And they will be able to introduce a new concept, a new company-wide concept. And it will not just be buried in their notebooks, but only when they gain, confidence. So you have to get both. You cannot just limit that, but then once the official definition changes, you have to allow and enable, updates and versioning and all of that.
I really like the story, and it just showed that there is some sort of there's a lot of value that can be got there, just as long as you're governing the right things and maybe giving freedom to analysts to do what they want in other places. Okay, cool. All right, so just to wrap up, what are you most excited about in the world of data governance?
So, well, I am the co-founder and CEO of a data governance company called Euno. I think after working almost 20 years with data teams in various, I'm in a lot of fields, in cybersecurity, in healthcare, in fintech, all trying to get sense from data. I figured there were so many challenges there. So my mission is to really help large-scale data teams understand data easily and get the value that they can from data. So that's why I chose to do that and build this company and try to solve some of the problems that we just touched.
Helping people get value from data is a very worthwhile cause.
Well, let's be more precise. Helping people or facilitating the creation of this central governed semantic layer and take organizations all the way to AI. That would be the more precise way of defining this mission. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Semantic layers certainly sound very exciting, and I love that it enables all that sort of fun generative AI use case as well. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Bye-bye.